to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the voice of Detroit. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. We're live. Today is Sunday, July 23rd, 2017. We're in our second hour. So we just wrapped up our segment talking about Colin Kaepernick and Michael Vick. All right. And I want to talk about the Tuskegee experiment because it's back in the news, if you've been paying attention. If you heard my segment on Thursday, Wake Up with Steve Hood, we talked about it some there also. So I want to make sure we talked about it here on the African History Network show. All right. So you have the descendants of the African-American men who were involved in the Tuskegee experiment. You have them saying that they want the remaining money from a settlement paid out in 1974 to be used in a specific way. If we look at the, they talk about how it could be used for college scholarships, different things like this, as opposed to going to usage for a museum. All right. If we look at the history of the Tuskegee experiment, a lot of people are not really familiar with this history because there's some myths surrounding it also. All right. So it was officially known as the Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis in the Negro male. The Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis in the Negro male, okay, commonly known as the Tuskegee experiment or the Tuskegee study. So in the fall of 1932, okay, there were flyers that began circulating around Macon County, Alabama, and they promised colored people, quote unquote colored people, this is what it said on the flyer, special treatment for what was called bad blood. Bad blood. Now, bad blood was a term that was used for a number of different types of ailments. The flyer said free blood tests, free treatment by county health department and government doctors. Okay, and you may feel well and still have bad blood. Come and bring all your family. So this is what the black and white sign said. So you had hundreds of men, all of them African American, many of them poor, a lot of them sharecroppers, who signed up. Some of the men thought they were being treated for rheumatism or bad stomachs. They were promised free meals, free physicals, and free burial insurance also. What the signs never told them was that they would become part of a government study called the Tuskegee Study of Untreated Syphilis in the Negro Male. The Tuskegee Study of Untreated Syphilis in the Negro Male. This was a secret experiment, a secret study conducted by the U.S. Public Health Service, the PHS, U.S. Public Health Service, and this study was designed to study the progression of the deadly venereal disease syphilis without treatment. What would happen to people if they had syphilis and it went untreated? Okay? So these African American men were never told that they had syphilis. All right? Contrary to popular belief, they were not injected with syphilis. They already had it. Okay? They were not injected with it. When you study this, they were not injected with it. They already had syphilis. And it went untreated. Okay? So it was known officially as the Tuskegee Study of Untreated Syphilis in the Negro Male. The study began at a time when there was no known treatment for syphilis. Okay? It starts in 1932. Originally, it was supposed to last between 6 to 9 months. It ended up lasting 40 years, from 1932 to 1972. Why it stopped is very, very interesting. Okay? So after being recruited by the promise of free medical care, you had 600 men originally who were enrolled in the project. The participants were primarily sharecroppers from Macon County, Alabama, and many had never visited a doctor before. Doctors from the U.S. Public Health Service, which was the department running the study, informed the participants, made up of 399 men who had latent syphilis. This is syphilis in the early stages, latent syphilis, and a control group of 201 men who were free of syphilis. Okay, they were being treated. They were told that they were being treated for bad blood, which is a term commonly used in that area of Macon County, Alabama, at the time to refer to a variety of ailments. The original study, once again, was designed to last for 6 to 9 months. Okay. Now, if we look at latent syphilis, according to the CDC, Center for Disease Control, latent meaning hidden. Latent syphilis is an early stage of syphilis, and it is a period of time when there are no visible signs or symptoms of syphilis. Without treatment, the infected person will continue to have syphilis in their body even though there are no signs or symptoms. Early latent syphilis is then this is a early stage. This is a stage of latent syphilis. Early latent syphilis is a latent syphilis where infection occurred within the past 12 months, and late latent syphilis is latent syphilis where infection occurred more than 12 months ago. So early latent syphilis is latent syphilis where infection occurred within the past 12 months, and late latent syphilis is latent syphilis where infection occurred more than 12 months ago. Okay, and latent syphilis can last for years. This stage of syphilis called latent syphilis can last for years. So you had 399 men who had latent syphilis, and they did not know it, and they were never told that they had syphilis either. So these men were monitored by health workers, and treatment was initially part of the study. Okay? Initially, treatment was part of the study. And I looked at a number of different sources for this, okay? But there was no cure at the time, and this was before penicillin was created, because penicillin was not created until the mid-1940s, and it wasn't until 1947 that it became the recommended treatment for syphilis. Some patients were administered arsenic, bismuth, and mercury, or they may be given a placebo such as aspirin, okay? After the original study failed to produce any useful data, it was decided to follow the subjects until their deaths. Okay? After the original study, which is supposed to last 6 to 9 months, failed to produce any useful data, it was decided to follow the subjects until their deaths. And syphilis goes through a number of different stages, okay, until you die from it without treatment. All right? And what's going to happen is when it was decided to follow the subjects until their death, all of the treatment stopped. Okay? Now, penicillin became the recommended treatment for syphilis in 1947, but was withheld from the men who were infected. Okay? Because they didn't know what they had. They were just told that they had bad blood. Okay? Now, the U.S. Public Health Service, which is the department that ran this study, Public Health Service researchers convinced local physicians in Macon County, Alabama, not to treat the participants, and research was done at the Tuskegee Institute, which is now called Tuskegee University, and this is where Booker T. Washington was. So in order to track the disease's full progression, researchers provided no effective care as the men died. Okay? In order to track the disease's full progression, researchers provided no effective care as the men died, as they went blind, or as they went insane, or experienced other severe health problems due to their untreated syphilis. Penicillin was still being withheld from these men 25 years later after it became available in the mid-1940s. This was in direct violation of U.S. government legislation that mandated that treatment be given for venereal diseases. It is estimated that more than 100 of the subjects died of what's known as tertiary syphilis, Tertiary, tertiary syphilis. Now, according to the CDC, Center for Disease Control, this is another stage of syphilis. Tertiary syphilis is rare and develops in a subset of untreated syphilis infections. It can appear 10 to 30 years after infection was first acquired and can be fatal. Tertiary syphilis can affect multiple organ systems, including the brain, nerves, eyes, heart, blood vessels, liver, bones, and joints. Symptoms of tertiary syphilis vary depending on the organ system affected. Okay, so it's estimated that more than 100 of the subjects in the 600 subject study died of tertiary syphilis. Now, Charles Pollard was one of the last survivors of the Tuskegee experiment, the Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis in the Negro male. Charles Pollard recalled that he heard that men were receiving physicals at a local one-room schoolhouse. And this was according to James H. Jones, the book that he wrote called Bad Blood, the Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment. Bad Blood, the Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment. So Charles Pollard said, so I went over and they told me I had bad blood. And that's what they've been telling me ever since. They come around from time to time and check me over and say, Charlie, you've got bad blood. Now, in his book, in the book, Bad Blood, the Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment, you had an African-American farmer named Herman Shaw. Herman Shaw recounted hearing about the study as a kind of healthy healthcare program. Okay, Herman Shaw said, people said you could get free medicine for yourself and things of that kind, and they would have a meeting at Salmon Chapel at a certain date, quote unquote. And he said, so he went. Now, initially, when the study began, treatment for syphilis was not effective, often dangerous and fatal, because this starts in 1932. This is before penicillin is invented. But even after penicillin was discovered and used as a treatment for the disease, the men in the Tuskegee study were not offered the antibiotic. Charles Pollard said, one of the survivors, all I knew was that they just kept saying I had the bad blood. They never mentioned syphilis to me, not even once. They've been doctoring me off and on ever since then. And they gave me a blood tonic, T-O-N-I-C. They gave me a blood tonic. Now, Herman Shaw went on to say, we got 3 different types of medicine. A little round pill, sometimes a capsule, sometimes a little vial of medicine. Everybody got the same thing. Now, although originally projected to last 6 months, as I said, the study is going to last for 40 years, from 1932 to 1972. And the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, reported in a timeline of the Tuskegee experiment, they state, local physicians asked to assist with the study and not to treat the men. Local physicians were asked to assist with the study and not to treat the men. The decision was made to follow the men until death. Now, many people saw the movie Miss Evers' Boys, 1997, starring Viola Davis. You had Lawrence Fishburne in the movie also. She portrayed a real life person named Eunice Rivers. Eunice Rivers. Now, Eunice Rivers was an African-American nurse who was recruited by doctors to serve as a recruiter and conduit between researchers and these African-American men. Now, most people called her Nurse Rivers, and she kept records of the men and drove them to government doctors when they visited the community. She took them to doctors' appointments in a shiny station wagon with the government emblem on the front door, according to the book Bad Blood, the Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment. On one occasion, she followed a man to a private doctor to make sure he did not receive treatment. Read the article from the Washington Post, You've Got Bad Blood, the horror of the Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment, May 16, 2017. You've Got Bad Blood, the horror of the Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment, May 16, 2017, Washington Post. In the mid-1960s, the U.S. Public Health Service venereal disease investigator in San Francisco was named Peter Buxton, B-U-X-T-O-N, Peter Buxton. And he found out about the Tuskegee study and expressed his concerns to his superiors that it was unethical. In response to this, the U.S. Public Health Service officials formed a committee to review the study, but ultimately opted to continue the study. And remember, they are following these men until they die of untreated syphilis. And it goes through all the stages. Okay? Autopsies were performed, and the project data, and these are the stages also. So after they die, the autopsies are going to be performed, and the project data will be analyzed also. So as a result of Peter Buxton leaking as a result of this, and the Tuskegee experiment not being shut down, Peter Buxton is then going to leak the story to a friend of his who's a reporter, okay? And this reporter passed on this story to her fellow reporter named Jean Heller, Jean, Jean Heller of the Associated Press. But I think she also wrote for the Washington Star, because when you read the story, when you read the article from blackpast.org, and I looked at a number of different sources, some say she reported for the Washington Star. So she may have been with the Associated Press and the Washington Star. Jean Heller broke this story about the Tuskegee experiment in July of 1972, and this prompted public outrage and forced the study to shut down. By that time, 28 participants had perished from syphilis. 100 more had passed away from related complications. At least 40 spouses, wives, at least 40 spouses had been diagnosed with syphilis, and the disease had been passed on to 19 children at birth. Because you can pass on syphilis to a newborn child from the mother. But you had men who passed on syphilis to their wives because they didn't know they had it, and then it's passed on to their children. So in 1973, the U.S. Congress held hearings on the Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis in the Negro male. And in the following year, in 1974, the study's surviving participants, along with their heirs of those who died, received a $10 million out-of-court settlement. So the lawsuit was filed in 1973 by civil rights attorney Fred Gray. Okay? And if the name Fred Gray sounds familiar, you've heard me talk about Fred Gray on this show. You've heard me talk about Fred Gray on Steve Hood's show. The reason why is because Fred Gray was also the attorney who filed the landmark lawsuit February 1st, 1956, the lawsuit of Browder versus Gale, which went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And this is the lawsuit that ended segregation on the buses in Montgomery, Alabama, which ultimately ends the Montgomery bus boycott December 20th, 1956. So when we look at the lawsuit of Browder versus Gale, the plaintiffs were Aurelia S. Browder, Claudette Colvin, Mary Louise Smith, and Susie McDonald, 4 African-American women who sued the mayor, William A. Gale, the mayor of Montgomery, Alabama, who in January of 1956 joined the White Citizens Council in Montgomery, Alabama, and encouraged other people to join the White Citizens Council also. We've talked about the White Citizens Council here on the show that started in 1954 in Mississippi. Okay, as a result, as a backlash to the Brown versus Board of Education desegregation U.S. Supreme Court case. We've talked about that here on the show before. So you have legendary civil rights attorney Fred Gray, who files this lawsuit in 1973 on behalf of the survivors of the Tuskegee experiment. Okay, now the Center for Disease Control stated the U.S. government promised to give lifetime medical benefits and burial services to all living participants. This is as a result of the lawsuit. This is one of the things that came out as a result of the lawsuit. Additionally, new guidelines were issued to protect human subjects in U.S. government-funded research projects. In 1974, the U.S. Congress passed the National Research Act. The National Research Act. Okay. Now, in 1947, the Nuremberg Code was established in response to Nazi physicians forcibly performing gruesome experiments on prisoners in concentration camps during World War II. The document set forth basic ethical principles for medical research involving human subjects, such as the requirements that a person must give informed consent before participating in an experiment. So you're going to have 1974 as a result of the Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis in the Negro male. As this being exposed, you're going to have legislation that's going to be passed to keep something like this from happening again. Okay, and that was the National Research Act of 1974. Now, as a result of the Tuskegee study, many African Americans developed a lingering, deep mistrust of public health officials, in part to foster racial healing. President Bill Clinton on May 16, 1997, issued an official apology to the 8 remaining survivors of the Tuskegee study. Here's an excerpt of what he said. The United States government did something that was wrong, deeply, profoundly, morally wrong. It was an outrage to our commitment to integrity and equality for all our citizens, to the survivors, to the wives and family members, the children and the grandchildren. I say what you know. No power on earth can give you back the lives lost, the pain suffered, the years of internal torment and anguish. What was done cannot be undone, but we can end the silence. We can stop turning our heads away. We can look at you in the eye and finally say, on behalf of the American people, what the United States government did was shameful, and I'm sorry, quote unquote. Now, during his apology, President Bill Clinton announced plans for the establishment of the Tuskegee University's National Center for Bioethics in Research and Healthcare. Tuskegee University's National Center for Bioethics in Research and Healthcare. And the final, the last surviving participant of the Tuskegee study passed away in 2004. Okay. For more information on the Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis in the Negro male, which lasted from 1932 to 1972, check out the article from, let's see here, check out the article from the Washington Post. You've Got Bad Blood, the horror of the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. Blackpast.org has an article, Tuskegee syphilis experiment. Britannica.com, which is the official website of Encyclopedia Britannica, they have an article, Tuskegee syphilis study. History.com, official website of the History Channel, the infamous 40-year Tuskegee study. The infamous 40-year Tuskegee study. Okay, all right. Let's go to now the descendants of the Tuskegee study. The descendants of the survivors, they're back in the news. We'll get to that in just a minute. Let's go to the phone lines quickly. Let's go to Abdullah. Abdullah, welcome to the African History Network show. Thanks for holding.
Great information out there. Me being, my mother was from the Cherokee tribe, and my father was African American. And you brought out a great point. There was a time when, and then the natives were called, who were native people, we didn't have no syphilis. And it was brought in here by the Europeans for a purpose. It was an accident. And this is what really happened to eliminate black people, because they call them Negro Males.
Right.
And that's why I'm so glad that you bring this out. Like my brother Malcolm said, some people don't want you to tell history, but history is best to reward all research. If you don't know where you came from, you don't know where you're going. If you don't know your history, you're lost. You know, the Jewish people, they keep their history out there.
Right.
They don't let nobody destroy their history.
Right, exactly.
You got to learn how to do that. And it's another disease they got in, it's in our newspaper, the Farm Call newspaper too, book, you know, that AIDS.
Mm-hmm.
That was created to destroy us. And it tells you in the book that we have there how they created it. They first carried it into Africa. And he's working his way on back into the United States. They said, well, if more black people got AIDS than anybody than white people, well, they left their liberty. That's not accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And they can get the books on that, on AIDS, how it was created, and why it's so deadly, you know.
Right.
But it can be stopped.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you, my brother, for putting the message out there. Keep up the good work.
All right, Abdullah, thanks for calling. Okay, let's go quickly to John, line 2. Hey, John, welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you're calling from.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the education and the information and knowledge. So knowledge and power.
Absolutely.
Anywhere, anytime. Now listen,
Mm-hmm.
I want you to understand. Did you know where the Nazi Germans get that experiment started at? They came from the United States. The United States president was passed it, and a lot of the Nazi Germans was coming over here, and that's where they started here, and they took it over there to the Germans and so forth. And that's when they started on the Jews and so forth. So
one of them was eugenics. Because eugenics means good genes, and the whole eugenics movement that starts in this country, Francis Galton coined the term eugenics around 1883 or something like this, and this was to weed out undesirables, to try to genetically weed out undesirables. Yeah, go ahead.
And they call the Jews Semites. They said Jews were mixed with African American blood, I don't know, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why the Nazi Germans got a lot of that stuff from the United States and so forth. So I just don't want you to put that in your resume next time you come on like that, because knowledge is power. And
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
All right, John. Now, something else that we have to understand when we deal with Nazi Germany is that they were killing Afro-Germans also. You had about 50,000 Afro-Germans who were killed during World War II by Nazis. And they're going to start actually with the Afro-Germans. A lot of people don't know that there were Afro-Germans there, Germans of African descent. But they're going to kill about 50,000 Afro-Germans, conduct experiments on them also. Okay, so the descendants of are in the news also. AtlantaBlackStar.com had an article, Tuskegee Syphilis Study Descendants asked judge to give them, not museum, but remaining settlement funds. This is from July 17, 2017. So from that $10 million settlement, the head of an organization for descendants of the Tuskegee Syphilis Study said the money could help fund college scholarships, the group provides, and members would like to develop a memorial garden dedicated to the men. Lily Tyson Head is the president of the Voices of Our Fathers Legacy Foundation, which is an organization for descendants of the Tuskegee Syphilis Study. And they said some of the funds also could go to a county-owned museum located in Tuskegee that was that has separately requested the funds, but the decision should be up to the descendants. The decision should be up to the descendants, and this is what Lily Tyson Head said. She goes on to say it was meant to go to the descendants in the first place. Okay, and she lives in Virginia. Now the Voices of Our Fathers Legacy Foundation group has sent a letter to the U.S. District Judge Myron Thompson asking him to withhold a decision on the money until they have time to hire a lawyer and file documents in the long-running class action lawsuit on the study. Now, Fred Gray, the attorney who filed the lawsuit, he's still alive. He's 86 years old. Fred Gray has requested the money for the Tuskegee Human and Civil Rights Multicultural Center. He requested the money go there, which includes an exhibit about the study and a memorial to the men. Okay, check out this article, AtlantaBlackStar.com. Tuskegee Syphilis Study descendants ask judge to give them not museum remaining funds. Okay, and we'll continue this on the other side of the break. Listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Voice of Detroit. We'll be back in a few minutes. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, and writer. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can register for the online course that I teach on Fridays, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All the sessions are recorded. If you miss any of it, you can go back and watch it over and over again. It's a 12-hour, 6-week online course called Ancient Kemet, the Moors and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We deal with thousands of years of history. If you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization, email me at info@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, info@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. If you want me to speak at your Kwanzaa celebration, Dr. King Day, Malcolm X Day, Marcus Garvey Day, African American History Month celebration, Juneteenth, email me, info@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can also call me, 313-462-0003, 313-462-0003, but I can respond much faster to email, okay? All right, and also if you want to advertise on the African History Network show here on 910 AM Superstation, email me at info@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay, so we talked about the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, the Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis in a Negro male. Also check out the article, Are Blacks Undertreated for Pain? Are Blacks Undertreated for Pain? Study reveals alarming racial bias. Check out that article. And then that's from blackdoctor.org. Also, in 2015, a government experiment was exposed that took place during World War II. NPR.org, National Public Radio, NPR.org had an article, Secret World War II Chemical Experiments Tested Troops by Race. Secret World War II Chemical Experiments Tested Troops by Race. And this dealt with a mustard gas chemical experiment done on African American soldiers in World War II as well. Okay, and I'll be doing a YouTube video later this week on the Tuskegee experiment and getting to these other, because I have other information on this I don't have time to get to today. So look out for that. If you go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, click on our YouTube banner, you can watch my YouTube videos there also. I just did one dealing with, back on July 14th, dealing with, and I did actually broadcast it today on YouTube also. I dealt with the 3/5 compromise of 1787 and why it does not say that black people were 3/5 of a human being or slaves were 3/5 of a human being. That's not what it says. Okay, it's Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 of the U.S. Constitution.